to introduce our first presenter.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that warm welcome. It is a pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker, Dr. Jenna Blackwood. Dr. Jenna Blackwood is an accomplished landscape architect and environmental consultant with nearly 30 years of experience in landscape design, environmental planning, and academia. She has contributed to several high-profile projects, including Emancipation Park, AZ Preston Hall at Mona, Secrets and Breathless Resorts in Montego Bay, and the St. Thomas Tourism Destination Development Plan. These projects reflect her dedication to integrating native plant species, enhancing ecosystem services, and protecting natural habitats within built environments. Her doctoral research explored household stormwater management and governance across Barbados, Jamaica, and St. Lucia, with a focus on improving water-sensitive urban design and supporting resilient ecosystems. A passionate advocate for urban green spaces, ecological connectivity, and the protection of local flora and fauna, Dr. Blackwood is a recognized voice in regional sustainability dialogues. She is a member of the Jamaican Institute of Architects and currently serves as president of the Regional Professional Body for Landscape Architects, APAC. Please welcome Dr. Jenna Blackwood.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, and good morning to everyone here and in the online space. So I'm here to share perspectives from the technical field. I am a landscape architect, as it was stated earlier. Many people don't know what a landscape architect is. I am the designer of outdoor spaces, of the outside, of the landscape, which is slightly different from your building architect, thank you, who focuses on the building. But I'm just going to jump in, and in the interest of time, we'll go and talk about some of the reflections and some of the perspectives on how we can balance the built environment with the natural environment. Thanks. Thank you. So, site-sensitive design. We have to design keeping the natural environment in mind. And I have here an example of site-sensitive design. This is by one of our local architects, Cornerstone. And as you can see, respect topography, hydrology, existing vegetation. This was a container office nestled between lignum vitae trees, which is our natural tree, one of our endemic species, and our national flower. And there was care taken to ensure that the trees were protected on this site. Minimize habitat destruction and fragmentation. And that is one of the things, that is an ideal, and this is an example of it. Sorry. Can go? And this is another example. This is at Holywell Park. This was recently built. This is by Kingston 10 Architects. And as you can see, there's minimal impact here on the environment. So it's sustainable in that it has the solar panels, so they're not running a lot of infrastructure. Use of native species, and that is wildlife. Ants and lizards and bugs and small things. We do not have in Jamaica what you call the charismatic megafauna that they have in other places, that you you immediately think of elephants and tigers and bears and those types of animals, and those evoke certain, thoughts. But everything here is very critical to environment. We have our pollinators, and it's not just honeybees that are pollinators. There are birds and there are butterflies and there are bats and there are moths and there are other creatures that are pollinators as well. And so we have to ensure that we are providing the habitats for those creatures. Recently, someone asked me, what has happened to the peony wallies? He said when he was small, he used to see peony wallies. But if they don't have the habitat, and if we have lights, everywhere, super bright, so we're trying to make daylight at night, these creatures, you will not see them. So, can we move on? Integrating green infrastructure. Now, recently we have what you call nature-based solutions. It is a buzzword. But in reality, this is what we have been doing for a long time. This is what our grandparents and our parents, and before that, great-great-grandparents would have been doing to manage stormwater, to manage runoff when it rains. And in doing so, some of these areas create habitats because we're using plants and earth and natural materials to manage the runoff. We have examples here of this. Is an example in Seattle. This is a rain garden. So what that is along a street, instead of having that that channel that runs along the street, or instead of having the parking bay that, now everywhere you go, we have to park, you allow the water to go through a series of cascades, and in doing so, in each basin, it is allowed to infiltrate into the land. So you manage the stormwater, but you're also creating a habitat here. Because if you use your native plant species, then you can also create a biodiversity corridor. Because what happens is that the road network, those are corridors, and then you would have the natural corridors as well. And you will have, in the same way that you have a network of roads, then you will have a network of biodiversity corridors. Here is a green roof. When I speak of a green roof, this is what I am speaking about. I'm not speaking about the top of the building where they have pools and gazebos and those types of things. I'm speaking about a natural thin layer of soil where you put a few, usually native species, because they will be able to survive without a lot of intervention. And in doing this, you manage runoff, stormwater, you also make the building cooler, you use less energy. There are lots of benefits to doing something like this. And you will also see this is something that is very common nowadays. Instead of paving everywhere, or car park areas, you will see that, I think it's now a requirement, where the authorities require you to have the permeable paving, and in that way, we are allowing percolation of water. So again, when I'm talking about the green infrastructure, nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions really just means using natural means of doing things like, again, like managing our water. So, if we go. Low impact development. This is another design by one of our local architects. This is the IDB building, which was done by APEC Consultants, and I worked on this project with them. And this is designed using LEED, what you call, it's an environmental rating system, and in using that, you have to do certain environmentally friendly practices. You have to have low, what they call here, they use rainwater harvesting, they have solar panels, they have permeable paving, This is reinforced grass. Now, this grass you can drive on. This grass actually has, it's a plastic grid system that you don't see, but if you drive on it, it's not going to damage the grass. They have water-efficient landscaping, so it was designed for drought. So we used some of the natural plants here. We have lignum vitae here. We've got some pink poi here. We've got different, the bottle brush, not native, but I know bees like it. And we tried to use as much as we could in a space like this. This kind of project, it reduces the environmental footprint, so it's energy efficient. Here they have they have solar panels now. Since this picture was taken, they have put solar panels in, so they've accommodated electric cars, all of that in a building like this. Can we move on? Collaborate with ecologists and planners. Now, this is something that I think we don't do enough. We don't collaborate with the people who can advise or who could give us information. So as architects, one of the important things is to work with the biodiversity specialists. So we have many people around who can help to guide us on which plants are the best plants to use. Where should we put them? How do you manage them? How do you take care of them? That is one of the things that I think we need to do a bit more of. This is just an image of globally, there is an agreement between several technical bodies. So the global body for architects, the global body for planners, global body for engineers, and they have an agreement where they have agreed to work together for what they call circular cities, so that they create cities that are not impactful. And they've now included horticultural producers, the urban health people. These are all people who have come together at the global level to develop guidelines and policies to create sustainable cities. Can we go on? Policy advocate and education awareness. Now, this is something that I'm hoping that we will do more of, and this is one event that does this, this awareness. Our policy guidelines, I think, need revision and need some attention. So if you look at this image, this is an image of Dillsbury Avenue in 2002, and this is it in 2023. And you will see all of this is now literally almost solid paved, because when they do these developments, there's not much space of green. There's not much green that's left around them. So you can see the difference. Used to be fairly green, just single family homes on very large lots, and now this is what it looks like. And we can do a similar comparison for several areas of our city. We can do it for Worthington Avenue, we can do it for Charlemont Drive, we can do it for areas in Havendale, we can do it all over. And we can do it in other towns as well, all over. This is the kind of development that we do. And if you look, this is one property. And if you look at that, it is 100% impervious. 100%. There is no green anywhere. These are the two sides. That is the front. And then you have the whole top. It is totally impervious. And if our policies allow that, then we have a problem. Then we need to revisit our policies. So the current policies for tree protection and green space, zoning and setbacks, we need to look at them. Because if this is allowed to happen and it has not broken any policies, then I don't know, there's an issue. We don't have penalties for excessive hard space. In some other jurisdictions, they tax you, they fine you when you have you have excess of hard area. They put it in your property tax or they put it in your stormwater tax, because Now there is water that is flooding into the they go and they play the checkers together, okay? And the planting is positioned, strategically positioned, to ensure that we could get the actual full size of plants and that we are getting the shading that we need where we need it. Can you move on? Can we? Another, this is just, you know, just showing what is possible. This is the Park Royal Collection Pickering Hotel in Singapore. Singapore is an amazing place to be and see biodiversity protection or see nature and development together. It is an amazing place. This particular, can you click? So this particular building has over 15,000 meters squared of greenery and sky gardens. So when they've done all of this, they have exceeded 200% of the land area, because the policy in Singapore, at least the current policy, is that if you are doing a development, you have to replace the same land area that you're taking up on the ground, you have to replace it with green above. That is the policy. And so what it is that they have redefined on the terraces, on the roof, vertical, all manner of things to fulfill that. Can you click? And all of this, there's rainwater harvesting, so all of this is supported by rainwater harvesting to irrigate all of this. So it's not something that you're going to put and leave, it is something that you know that you need to maintain. You know, they've got like 50 plus varieties of plants here that support all of this wildlife. Click. And that's it from me. It is a lot to cover in a very short space of time, but I hope it just gives you a perspective of what is possible and what could be better, and we can talk further, okay?
Thank you very much.
Sorry for some of them. However, I think it is not as expensive as people think. And to do green infrastructure is actually cheaper than putting in concrete drains. It's actually cheaper. So it is just a matter of how you think about it. And if it's just like when you get a solar panel system on your house, initially it might cost you a little bit more, initially, but in the long run, when you look at the benefit of it in the long run, then it after a while, it pays for itself. And we don't find ourselves in the position that we are now. When it rains, in 10 minutes, the place is flooded. So we have to look at the long-term benefit. We cannot look at the short-term all the time. And remember, sustainable means balancing economic, environment, and social. That's what it means. So you cannot look at one aspect and don't look at the other aspects.
Thank you so much for that insightful presentation. So one of the global national biodiversity targets is mainstreaming biodiversity into several sectors. So with this presentation was very insightful as how it can be integrated into the planning and development sector. Our next guest presenter is Mr. Joey Brown. He is currently the General Curator of Hope Zoo, a non-profit zoo and wildlife rescue facility here in Kingston, Jamaica. Prior to Jamaica, Joey completed his Master of Science degree at the University of Oklahoma, his Bachelor of Science at the University of Kansas, and spent 5 years working in the herpetology department at the San Diego Zoo in California. For his master's degree, Joey studied as a Fulbright research scholar and National Geographic explorer researching the ecology and conservation of the critical endangered Philippine crocodile. Additionally, his studies took him to Fiji for research on the critically endangered Fijian crested iguana. Joey's graduate research with crocodiles and iguanas focused mainly on the spatial ecology, diet, and use of Head Start programs as a conservation tool for threatened species. Now residing at Hope Zoo, Joey manages a collection of over 1,400 animals and an animal care team of zookeepers and a veterinarian, along with the Conservation Head Start program for the critically endangered Jamaican iguana. Joey is actively involved in numerous conservation networks and advisory boards. He is a member of IUCN Crocodile and Iguana Specialist Groups, board member of the Natural History Museum of Jamaica, as well as the Jamaican Iguana Recovery Group, a member of the Endangered Species Working Group Jamaica, and founding board member, Animal Assisted Recovery Care Program, which is the first animal therapy initiative at Jamaica's Bustamante Children's Hospital. With a career grounded in science, education, and compassionate care, Joey Brown is a leading advocate for wildlife conservation and animal welfare in Jamaica. Please welcome Joey Brown.
Thank you. Appreciate the wonderful introduction. All right, thanks for having me here today. Kind of looking forward to showing you or talking about one of my main interests, obviously the zoo itself, but also wildlife conservation in Jamaica. And specifically, what I deal with most commonly is human-crocodile conflicts around Jamaica, Kingston. This is a nonstop issue, and so we're going to kind of go over a few different case studies and then some solutions of what's going on. Next slide. Oh, yeah, so brief outline. So we're just going to talk about some of the wildlife rescue work we do at Hope Zoo, human-croc conflicts, outreach and awareness that we're currently up to and that we need to do more in the communities. And then we'll talk about the most recent kind of incident and occurrence at the Greater Portmore sewage ponds. All right, so for a lot of people that may not know that the Hope Zoo is obviously a zoo, but there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors. We are kind of like the primary wildlife rescue facility in Jamaica. There's really no other place. You go to some other states or countries, they have different sanctuaries. We are the sanctuary for Jamaica, so we have an MOU with NEPA, operating legally as this facility, caring and keeping for various protected species. And it's almost every other day we have various native animals that are coming in injured, orphaned, as we'll talk about. But I also have to big up my awesome animal care team. These are some of my zookeepers and veterinarians. These guys go above and beyond. It's never a dull day at the zoo. We have, like they said, over 1,400 animals. And on top of that, we have new wildlife coming in every day that we're working to rehabilitate. So these guys are the ones that usually make it happen. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what I was mentioning earlier, so this is kind of some of our brief rescue and rehab work with native wildlife. We have various protected species here in Jamaica. Many of them, obviously all of them native, and many of them endemic as well. And so, we have like our barn owl here. This is a baby crocodile. It's our American or Jamaican, it's called a North American kestrel, but one of our native species. And then our endemic little Jamaican owl, and that's a little fledgling. So a lot of the cases that come into the zoo are usually orphaned, usually young birds, fallen birds that fall out of the nest or they get injured. And then, it's usually local members of the public or NEPA that are bringing them to us as well. And then we also get usually injured or sick animals. A lot of before we jump into the croc stuff, a lot of the wildlife conflicts is, we get barn owls or these parrots that are running into power lines, running into windows, and sometimes they're getting head injuries, wing injuries. And so the NEPA does a good job of usually, NEPA and the public are rescuing those animals, bringing them to the zoo, and then our vet team will go to work kind of with the rehabilitation process. And a lot of those animals sometimes take months, anywhere from 2 to 6, 8 months before we can get those injuries rehabilitated. And then, they get reintroduced back to the wild. Any animals that can't be reintroduced, say a bird with a terribly fractured wing that needs to be amputated, which obviously can't be released because it's just going to die in the wild, those animals will then stay at the zoo as kind of ambassador exhibition animals. Real quick, so this is a neat case. This baby croc here was actually hatched at the zoo, but the nest was actually from Old Harbor. So this female croc, one of our American crocs, had decided to lay her nest right in front of someone's house in Old Harbor. And obviously these people weren't too pleased about that. And there's a good chance that nest was probably going to get destroyed soon because they didn't. Obviously, that's kind of the one time of the year when crocs can become a bit more aggressive because they're being protective. Those eggs are going to incubate underground for the next 3 months, and that mom is a good mom. She's going to protect her nest. And so thankfully, we have some awesome colleagues at CCAM that reached out to us, and they made the right decision. We had them dig up the nest and collect the eggs, and we were able to bring over 30 of those eggs to the zoo, where we put them in our incubator to incubate for the next month, and then they eventually all hatched out. And this is one that literally just hatched out right in my hand. And so we're able to, we save those eggs and babies, we're able to raise them at the zoo temporarily, and then get them reintroduced back into the wild. Next slide, please. So this is the same croc that was on this last slide. So a good little case study. So this is a croc we named Captain Hook. He came from Salt River. Fishing nets in many of our waters are illegal for a reason. This croc had been tangled and stuck in a net. Again, I think this was CCAM or NEPA guys had found this croc. He was stuck in a net, and he'd likely been stuck in that net for weeks. You can see how emaciated. We thought this croc was nearly dead when he came in. How skinny his neck is. He's got his spine sticking out. Crocs normally store a lot of their fat in their neck and their tail. His tail, he looked basically like a skeleton, and then we weren't sure if he really was going to make it. But after some intensive veterinary care at our facility and did a really good job, this is the same croc, not too much longer, So it looks like a whole new croc. This is how, you don't see any spine. They got a nice, thick, healthy neck, nice, thick base of that tail. And so he's going to be a great candidate to go back to the wild. This is obviously a protected species, a cultural icon. These crocs are on our coat of arms. So that's what we're trying to work hard to protect. And he got the name Captain Hook because he came to us with missing one foot. So this didn't happen. And so one of our keepers took the name giving him the name Captain Hook. The next slide, please. All right, so like I mentioned earlier, we work really closely with NEPA. I have some great colleagues there that we're constantly running around Jamaica to save this animal, save that animal. And there's a few different cases. So this one, Leighton, this is a croc that was actually found up in Hellshire Hills, like the Hellshire housing community. And a lot of times when we find these crocs, they usually just get turned around. They're going from one body of water to this body of water, and now there's a road or something in the way, and then crocs get lost too. And so this croc was found in kind of between these two houses. And fortunately, we just kind of pick up those crocs and then take them, to the nearest wetland. But thankfully, the NEPA team realized that the croc was actually extremely dehydrated and sick as well. It's hard to see in the pic, but it was actually quite skinny and emaciated. So they immediately brought that croc to the zoo, and we got it on a drip system, and we ended up keeping it just for a few weeks until it was kind of rejuvenated, and she was able to. And this is an adult female too. And usually around the breeding seasons and stuff, they are moving around a lot more. This is Ricardo Miller from NEPA. This was a crazy day. It was like right in the middle of a hurricane pretty much going on, and Bull Bay was flooded with 3 feet of water. And crocs pop up in the floods, obviously. Thankfully, someone called the police, and they had called NEPA, and so we had to race down there in the middle of the storm, and there's pretty much one croc actually washed up by the police station, another one was in front of the lady's house. And we got down there. We got police escort as well, and we were able to capture these 2 crocs, and then ended up being able to relocate them far away from kind of the Bull Bay kind of housing community. This one was with Treya, as a NEPA at the time. That's actually at the airport. So obviously the airport is built out by Palisados, right there in Kingston Harbor, and there's lots of crocs around there. And this croc had found its way into the airport cargo parking lot. So even though it had a whole fence around, and there's a reason people should maintain their fences, which we're terrible at here, because we went that area, and there's obviously a gaping, rusting hole in the fence. And as those crocs are moving around, he found a hole to get into the parking lot and then couldn't get out. So he was just kind of doing laps around the parking lot. And thankfully, the guardsman security lady reached out in concern, and so we got out there right away. Next slide, please. This is a couple different croc issues. So you'll hear a lot of the same areas where these conflicts go on. Bull Bay, Hellshire, Greater Portmore, especially Hellshire and Greater Portmore. As I'll talk about later too, these communities, they were built on a crocodile swamp, on a wetland. So they were there first. Did it change? Thank you. Good. Yeah. So we took over their home, and we just kind of destroyed their home. So that's why we can't be shocked, obviously, when they are popping up. But these are some of the common places we go. And originally, we got a call about a small croc that was in front of this lady's house in Hellshire, which is good. I will say that we are getting more calls from the community, which is a good thing. Instead of maybe someone killing it or running over it or something, we are encouraging and we are seeing more kind of progress in people reaching out. So yeah, this lady had called in distress. We're like, it's a big crocodile. And we got down there, it was a little 12-inch baby. And so we were happy to take it from her. But on our way there, this is like a Sunday afternoon. On our way there, we then got a call, there's a croc in Greater Portmore. I think it was 2 East. And he was under this gully, under this road canal. So there's a gully here in Portmore, and it goes right under the road and continues up. And he was back in there. And obviously, this created a whole big kind of ruckus. And a lot of times in those situations, it's the quick response by us or someone is critical, because usually if we don't get there in time, people start stoning the croc. They're going to try to kill it off. Or some guys, they try to catch it themselves. And that can be obviously more dangerous for the people, because our crocs in Jamaica are actually, people think of them as kind of like killer animals, but they're actually quite timid and shy. Like, they just want to be left alone, but at the same time, if they need to defend them, if they feel threatened, they are going to defend themselves. And so that's why we really need to get to these responses as quick as possible, because that's something can easily go wrong. And so thankfully, we just stopped right by here. Actually had to get in about a knee high of gully water and go back underneath the road and noose this croc out of there and pull him out. But then this also creates a good time. I have some more pictures in a bit, but this creates a good time for us to have, kind of interaction with the community there. We let them kind of, once we have the croc secure, they get to touch it. We talk to them a bit more. It gives some good education initiatives. And then we also build up a good relationship with them where a lot of times, we hand out our phone numbers. Like, please just call us as soon as we're happy to help you guys out. So just give us a call and help out. So, we got both these crocs caught up, and we'd end up taking this croc quite a bit farther away outside of Portmore, kind of in these other wetlands, and released him. But you'll see in my next slide, please, he popped up about 6 months later. So that my last slide was, November, would have been November 2023. January 2024, NEPA started getting calls from the principal at Greater Portmore Primary School. So what the school set up is you have the school, and you have this little drainage canal, and then you have the football field here, and they have this nice big football field. Well, the principal was saying, hey, there's a croc in the pond. And it wasn't doing anything, and he said that. He's like, it's just sitting there. The kids sit there and watch it, but he's like, I'm worried. Respectfully so, I love, I want to save the crocs, but we also need to protect the people, and that's just a risky situation. Helping us out, I had binoculars. I was loading my, kind of put it in some perspective. So obviously, this Greater Portmore. And so this kind of little drainage creek here leads into like the housing community. And behind this is a wall that then goes into like the Portmore wetlands, which is where a lot of the crocs live. And separating that wall, there is like a little 3-foot drain pipe that used to have a metal gate on it, but now that metal gate is rusted and fallen off. And that's the first thing we noticed. Like, we've told them, like, you need to get this fixed, because this is just like an open door, for these crocs. They just come right in here, and we're going to go move this croc, put it over here, but there's a good chance he's going to come right back. The relocation thing is not a viable kind of tool, because a lot of people don't know crocs kind of have this migratory sense like birds, where they can find their way back to where they came with no problems, and as they get older, they get really strong kind of homing territorial mechanisms. And so we can go drive them across the island, and they're going to swim right back and come there. So a lot of the issues is, maintaining fences, maintaining these walls that will at least keep these crocs out and prevent more things like this. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the dark side, the ugly side of some of the work. Kind of harsh pictures, but this is reality. So dealing with the zoo, and I'm a good vet, we do a lot of the necropsies, post-mortem exams on whenever crocs are found dead. Even if a croc is hit by a car in Hellshire, I tell my colleagues to call me and say, we'll come collect it, because we can still open up that croc. Although it's dead, we can still learn a lot from these animals, about what they're eating, any parasites, how their body condition compared to, it tells us a lot about the environment they were living in. For instance, this is a prime example. This is a croc from 2021 and from Clarendon. He was found dead in the field there. So fortunately, NEPA brought him to me and opened him up. And his stomach was totally impacted with over 27 plastic bags. 27. Like, all of this was packed up. Like, his stomach was packed tight like a football. And there's no, his stomach was totally impacted. There's no digesting going on. It was horrifying. And so since then, I've been opening up several crocs, and sadly enough, this has been a reoccurring thing. And we're finding plastic and garbage inside these crocs. They are scavengers. And a lot of times, especially if they're living in a more unnatural kind of wetland, they might find food scraps or this in a garbage pile, and they're just incidentally, taking this garbage. And then this is obviously poisoning them, and then even kind of starving them. This is a similar croc. You can see totally emaciated, shoulder blades, spine, stomach was totally impacted with garbage. This one we think died actually naturally. This one was from Greater Portmore. No, sorry, this one was from Hellshire. Thankfully, our friends at UDC called us. And he died, we think, kind of battling with another male croc, but we still opened up his stomach. It was full of condoms, plastic, tampon, everything. Like, it's the most horrifying stuff you can imagine. This one was a roadkill croc from St. Thomas, but obviously you can tell he's missing his tail. So and that's not an accident either. So one of the biggest threats here in Jamaica for crocs is the meat from the crocodile tail. Unfortunately, there's this belief that it works as an aphrodisiac for men. And so oftentimes you get people that they'll go out, kill these crocs, chop off the tail, take it for meat. And so a lot of times we find these dead crocs. But we're not sure if he was run over by the car first and then the tail was taken, or he was possibly killed, taking the tail, and then a car ran over him after that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what are some of the solutions like that we can at least work on our end at the zoo? Next slide, please. So education is obviously one of the biggest ones, especially with the kids. At the zoo, we get lots of schools, lots of families visiting. So, you can talk to kids all day long, but when you can actually put a crocodile in front of them and let them touch it, that is a really impactful thing that we can do, especially with them being the youth and hopefully future leaders, of Jamaica. We can really kind of start there. And then also working in the communities. This is in Seaview Gardens. We routinely get calls about crocs in the gully. This croc, there's a croc right here. Been living in this gully for like 15 years, and then all of a sudden some guys decide they want to try to catch it, and then it turns into a bad situation, and we had to go down there. So as we were catching this croc, I saw this older lady too, and she's like, no problem, I've been there 30 years, So, but, getting out into the communities and working with a lot of these people too, having them call us first before, they try to do anything with the crocs. But there are a lot of simple things too with infrastructure where, some of these gullies can have a little bit higher retaining walls, a bit higher fences that will help keep people out and keep the crocs from coming into the houses. Next slide, please. And then we started recently, a couple years ago, doing these workshops at the zoo, capacity building, working with a lot of the government agencies and NGOs just to improve, at least when it comes to the croc rescue thing and working with the communities, we have a lot of expertise at the zoo and we can share that. And so, we can have more of a reach around Jamaica. Like I said earlier, like timing on these rescues, like the response time is really critical. And sometimes I'm getting calls to go to Portmore and then getting calls to go to Clarendon. It's like, so if we can have, our colleagues at CCAM and UDC that are well trained, we can cover that area. So, oh, this is a video. Forgot. You can start the video. And so what we do, we invite them to they come to the zoo for a day. And one, we work together. Let's see if it starts. So like I said, we focus on kind of safe practices, one for capture, restraint, and kind of transporting the crocs when you're responding to these. We start off usually with the smaller crocs, getting them comfortable working with the smaller crocs, doing that practice, and then we work up to some bigger crocodiles. And then we do also go over data collection with them, because whenever we're catching up these crocs, we're collecting body measurement data. We actually put pit tags, microchips in them, so we can track them continuously. We can always tell who they are when we're tracking them in the wild. This is all stuff we teach them. And then obviously the safety thing is really important, especially when you get to the bigger ones and you're transferring those animals. We know it's important to keep the animal kind of healthy and safe, but also making sure no one is getting injured as well. And so these are things we routinely go over with them during this. And obviously just kind of more coverage island-wide and much more impact of saving these crocs. You can jump to the next slide, please. This is another one we did last year too. This is more with JDF and NEPA. And again, we're constantly working with JCF, JDF, because they are helping us a lot of times when these croc conflicts are going on. Especially a lot of times when it's the flood season, it's the storms. They're critical assets in a lot of this too. So we'll kind of do these desensitization sessions at the zoo. Where we'll do kind of like a half-day kind of lecture, talking about crocs, explaining their importance, the threats and everything, and then we do some kind of hands-on fun with them. Next slide, please. And this was a recent one we did just a few months ago. This is with Treya from Jam Croc Initiative, and then NEPA and UDC. So again, we did like kind of a morning lecture series, and then some hands-on practical stuff. But it really helps. We have UDC in Hellshire, NEPA, around all over, and then CCAM in Clarendon. This really helps, building up this network of experienced people. And we build a fun network amongst ourselves. We're all very passionate people, and so we have fun together, but we're also kind of uplifting everyone at the same time. Next slide, please. So real quick, so I'm sure some of you heard about the recent incident at the Greater Portmore sewage ponds. I wanted to show some pictures that put it a bit more in perspective too. You think of a sewage pond, you might think of this small little pond area. It's not. This sewage pond is a vast area of water, and although it's not the most ideal water quality, it's actually a great kind of refuge for them. If you consider Greater Portmore, like I mentioned earlier, was usually originally a wetland swamp. Well, this is what it looks like now. And so if you look at this picture, well, obviously the crocs are going to come to the sewage pond. That's like their last remaining water. And it kind of is like a private retreat for them, because this is private property. They can't mess with, people can't come in there and mess with them and everything. So for years, these crocs have been here. They've been thriving. We had numerous adults that are commonly around there, various nest sites going on, yearlings, different age classes. And so it's like this, almost like this breeding ground for them, and it's been great. Next slide, please. And then Earth Day happened. It was the most horrible discovery we did. We got a call, actually from a local, saying he'd found one dead croc and that there's one croc still alive down there. And so NEPA had reached out. We immediately drove down there with my NEPA colleagues. And sure enough, we found one dead croc. And as we walked around, we counted 2, 3, 4, ended up finding 8 or 9 dead crocs around. So what had pretty much happened is these ponds, when they're full, the crocs can easily go in and out of them. But when the ponds was rehabilitated a couple years ago, they put this thick plastic liner that surrounds the ponds. And this was warned at the time when they put these in that these are going to be a death trap. When the ponds are full, it's no problem. But as soon as that water level drops, it's just like a giant slip and slide, and those crocs can't get out. And this is warned about, this is told about, and nothing is eventually done. So unfortunately, at some point recently, a couple of these ponds here went empty. These crocs were stuck in there, and they pretty much got cooked. You can see all the crocs pretty much, except for 2, were found around the edge of the pond, and you can see their foot marks and track marks as if they were trying to climb out and couldn't get out. So it's really horrifying. Next slide. And this is one of the last ones. So this video will kind of show you. You can start the video. But this is one of the horrible ones. So this is actually an adult pair. This is the male. That's the female. They laid together till their last dying moments. The female has her head resting on the male. And the worst thing part of it is that she was gravid. She was pregnant. During the decomposition, her belly had opened up, and eggs were coming out of her stomach. So she had over 27 eggs in her stomach. But you can see how big this area is. And that's just, all the dead crocs were in these 2 ponds. And this keeps going out. And it shows really how big of an area this is, backed right up against Greater Portmore. Next slide, please. Thankfully, there's a huge cry for help. We immediately put this out, and the public outcried, which is a really good, seeing that, even people that obviously don't love crocs, they're horrified. Because, even if you don't love crocs, it was horrifying to see that any animal go through that, let alone a protected species, an endangered species here in Jamaica, something that sits on top of our coat of arms, and here are, 10 or 12 adult breeding crocs that died, because of our bad reasons. Thankfully, Minister Smoota did jump on this right away, and he immediately called within a couple of days an emergency meeting, and where me and a team in NEPA and their team met down at the ponds that Saturday. And he simply said, obviously horrified, but straight to the point, one, why did this happen? And then what do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And so we are working with his team and NWC to put various things in place. One of which which it was told about years ago, is in these ponds they need to have kind of almost like a exit ladder ramp system, which would allow wildlife to go in and out. So if those ponds do drop low, the crocs still have a kind of think of like a series of pallets going down the ramp. They still have a way to climb out. And 2 is they need better monitoring. There should be monitoring, at least several times a week, that people are checking on these ponds, checking on these crocs. These crocs have been there for years. We go down there every 4 or 5 months to do surveys. We've done surveys on these ponds I've been helping NEPA do surveys for the last 5 years. But we're only down there, every probably 5 to 6 months. But they need monitoring every day there, every few days. So that is going to be put in place as well. And so it is good that this is, although it's terribly devastating, hopefully that's, it's a very harsh lesson to be learned, but hopefully something good comes of this, where the future kind of crocs and wildlife will be protected. Last slide. Just want to say thank you, and the kids make everything worth it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause again for that presentation, where we saw so many different facets to wildlife management and the whole interaction with communities and the different factors that have to be considered and the investments that have to be made to look after human well-being as well as biodiversity. Any questions for Mr. Brown? We can take one.
It's not a question, but it has brought to the fore for me something that I've always spoken about. And when Joey mentioned about the fact that the crocodiles have a homing sort of system, or that they go, it has brought back, even for our planning in our urban areas, the need for a green plan, because animals do not stay in one spot. So you cannot say that you're going to design a park and all the birds will be over there, and a park is over there, and a park is over there, and a park is over there, and they are going to each stay in a place. They, just like us, they eat somewhere, they sleep somewhere, they mate somewhere, they go somewhere else for some other reason. They're always moving. And so we need to be thinking of how are we going to balance our, how we move and live, because we work as well. We do the same thing. We live one place and go one place, and we use the road network. So we need to provide them with their own network so that we're both able to live harmoniously.
Thank you very much for that comment. And it's wonderful to see the sort of cross connection that Dr. Blackwood is making with Mr. Brown. Yes, yes. Okay, I see a hand. We can only take one more.
Thank you. Good morning. Sasha Gayluk here, NRM student and a resident of Seaview Gardens. I'm wondering if there are any initiatives to educate persons on, to educate persons on the importance of protecting the wildlife. For example, I live in the community, but I don't actually stay there every day. I go to school, work, etc. But I've not seen any campaigns going around or any educational sessions in the communities to say let's educate our people on the importance of protecting wildlife. Or I know you said you have contact sometimes with persons, but the wider community, do we have anything for schools, just general persons in the evenings where we could have a session and say let's educate them on the importance of protecting wildlife?
I was in regards to crocs, a colleague, Treya Picking, actually has started this kind of initiative, Jam Croc initiative, and she actually had, up until very recently, she had a large USAID grant that was going to start doing like the workshops I was telling you about, but more for public education, but going island-wide, obviously not just Kingston, Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, all over, and getting into more of these populated communities that live with the crocs and doing these various workshops. But unfortunately, the USAID grant was canceled, so she lost that, but she recently just got this kind of re-going, so that's going to start up this year. And I think she's going to be collaborating with NEPA as well to doing more of these, at least for the crocs, these kind of, like you said, these community kind of education seminars in the areas where it matters most, the people that are affected by it. But we definitely need more of it, and there's still a lot of people that are very ignorant and don't know really what's going on. And it's sad because I deal with these people all the time, and it pains me because I see that they just don't know. And we do desperately need more of it, though. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years it does improve.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Another round of applause, please. Okay, at this point in time, we are going to have our vote of thanks. So I am going to invite Miss Elizabeth Morrison, our zoologist in the museum, to come forward. And can we have the tokens for our presenters also being brought forward?
So, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the organizing team, I extend my deepest gratitude to all who made today's Biodiversity, Development and Knowledge Hour a success, came with us today to commemorate the International Biodiversity Day. To our distinguished speakers, Dr. Jenna Blackwood from the Jamaica Institute of Architects, and Mr. Joseph Joey Brown from the Hope Zoo Preservation Foundation. We deeply appreciate your powerful and engaging talks on biodiversity and urban development and on human-wildlife interactions. I have to say a personal thank you, Dr. Blackwood, for your work on Emancipation Park. I've always, really admired it, and, as a respite of peace and harmony with nature, where we can all go, as you say, interact as human beings together. Really, really appreciate that, and appreciate you, Joey, for all you do. You and your team going out and wading through all those murky waters and catching our crocodile friends and relocating them, rehabilitating them. Thank you, because it's hard work that many of us would not think of doing, but so important, and so touching that, those pictures that you showed, what happened on Earth Day. We don't want to see that happening ever again, and we thank you for that. Right? A special thank you to the Clearinghouse Mechanism, Dr. Susan Davis and Ms. Shamir Laws, for conceptualizing and planning today's program, and bringing this initiative to life. We're grateful for your vision and the energy that you poured into making the event a reality, and hoping that it is annual. Keep it up. To our remarkable PR team, Mrs. Onika Hall, Mrs. Anelka Wisdom, Mr. Jeff Clark for his export work in handing the AV, Mr. Richard Belto, who captured, hopefully, the spirit of the event through his lens, and Mr. Cleon Golding, whose vibrant flyer design brought the people in today. All right, thank you all for that. To the online support team, Mrs. Tiona Rattigan and Mrs. Karine Parks, thank you for ensuring smooth and seamless experience for the virtual audience. Heartfelt thanks will go also to the administrative support team, Ms. Wahida McKenzie and Ms. Janelle Morris, and those who warmly welcomed our guests and made sure that they were comfortably settled in. To Ms. Shea Walker, thank you for organizing the venue and handling logistics with care and attention as you normally do. A warm thank you to Ms. Patricia Parchment and her team, and Ms. Alika Johnson for providing our liquid refreshments that we'll have afterwards. And again, thank you everyone online for taking the
Come forward so that we can get our photo up. This bag. Yes. And again, Dr. Blackwood, much appreciation and thank you very much. Okay. All right, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Much appreciated. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have to thank our audience. You were very engaged in the presentations. We all were. And we thank you for taking the time to come out and to support this effort. I also want to say a personal thank you, not only to our presenters and our audience, but to the Natural History Museum of Jamaica team. All the departments provided support for this event. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that has been put in. We look forward to hosting more of these types of knowledge hours. And we also look forward now that you can go and spread the word that the content of our knowledge hour is high, that it is something worth coming to, and that when you come, you're going to leave here a lot more informed and enlightened than when you first walked through the door. So in my closing remark, I will simply say two things. One, I want to highlight something about two species. So Dr. Blackwood mentioned the Lignum vitae. It is a native species. I know Jamaicans love the national flower so much they like to claim it as their own, but it's found elsewhere, but we are the island that has it as our national flower. And Mr. Brown focused on the crocodile. Interestingly, I heard on one of the media houses recently the commentators debating the difference between an alligator and a crocodile. And they said that what we had here was the Jamaican crocodile. The American crocodile, it's the American crocodile, yes, he's nodding. And the crocodile differs from the alligator with its long, narrow snout. Right, so that's what I want you to remember, that we only have crocodiles here in Jamaica. We don't have any alligators occurring here naturally. Yes. They're crocodiles, great, thank you. And in my final statement, ladies and gentlemen, before I release you for your liquid refreshment, it is clear from the presentations today that Jamaica can. We have capacity in Ireland. We have scope for developing that capacity to work with nature, to be able to come up with nature-oriented solutions, and we have skill and expertise available. And so I'm optimistic going forward that our policymakers and conservationists, now that we have brought it to their attention that we have this type of capacity that needs to be further funded, further developed, and expanded, that we can look for a better, brighter future for biodiversity conservation in Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the rest of International Day for Biological Diversity, and thank you.